modern technology. And I created this little agenda for you, so you know what's going to happen over the course of the next hour. If we get sidetracked on tangents or questions or whatever, I just want to go with the flow, and I want to make sure that you get value from this time that we're spending together. But I did prepare some things, some content, and some practices that we can do together during this time to hopefully go a little bit deeper into this topic of Indigenous wisdom and modern technology. And at the top of the presentation, I'm going to tell you who I am, because a lot of you don't know me, or you know me kind of superficially, and you don't really know my background and my experience. This image is from Avatar. I just saw the most recent one in the movie theater. I highly recommend it. It was pretty
Hi, Miss
powerful.
Paula.
Hello. Hello. Okay, so let's see. We'll go into introductions. Okay, so I'm Gabrielle Pulici, known by my students and clients as Dr. Gabby. I've been a professor of holistic medicine for 18 years. And I've had a number of different roles that I've played. In my doctoral work, I did a dissertation on women healers. So I interviewed women who were practicing Indigenous medicine and all different kinds of medicine all over the world. So energy healers and shamanic healers and doctors of Chinese medicine and doctors of Ayurvedic medicine. I also did about a dozen different certifications. So I'm certified twice in yoga, once in massage. I'm a master health coach. I'm certified in mind body medicine, permaculture, herbalism, and a number of other things. So I've been deeply embedded in the world of healing and healthcare for the last 20 years. And I've been teaching all these different methodologies at the undergraduate and graduate level. So I've taught in doctoral programs and master's programs, taught energy medicine and nutrition and introduction to integrative health and wellness, all of these things. And then during the pandemic, I wrote a book, and it's called All This Healing Is Killing Me. And it's the story of my personal journey of healing from childhood trauma. I grew up in a home with domestic violence, with drug and alcohol abuse, and with mental illness. I also had a lot of unexplained mystical experiences as I was learning and practicing different kinds of medicine, and those were non-psychedelic experiences. So I didn't get into psychedelics until about 2 years ago, but I was experiencing mystical experiences, and I was traveling and working with healers all over the world. And the way that I came into psychedelics was during the pandemic. I was doing volunteer work, humanitarian work in Guatemala, in Dominican Republic, in Puerto Rico, and New Mexico. And I was working with some indigenous healers who introduced me to peyote and psilocybin and ayahuasca. And I started exploring and experimenting as a continuation of my own personal healing journey, and also as a curiosity. And we're going to talk a little bit about in the presentation this psychedelic renaissance that's been happening. You know, Michael Pollan has been a big proponent and sort of bridge for a lot of people to come into this awareness and this knowledge of plant medicine. So we're going to explore some of that and what that is. And then most recently, in the past year, I've been working in something called Web3, which is based in blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs and metaverse, which we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I was recruited to do that because one of the projects I was on in Dominican Republic was built on tokenomics. Tokenomics is a method of creating currency that's based in technology. And they were using the tokenomics to raise money for a permaculture project. And I was blown away by the ingenuity, the innovation, the self-reliance of this community to create something to support themselves and their project. And so I began exploring and teaching about that. And then I got recruited to work in that industry. So I've been in that industry for the last year. And I see a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities between the psychedelic renaissance and the technology renaissance. And so that's why I'm speaking on this topic. And I spoke on this topic at the Wonderland conference last month also. And it was a very powerful experience to kind of talk about the bridge between the past and the future, the indigenous and the modern. And so that's what we're going to be diving into today. So because I'm a healer, because everything I do is grounded in practice. All of it is very experiential. It's intended for transformation more than information. The first thing we're going to do is a little practice together. If you are so inclined to join me, I want you to just sit back and find a comfortable position for your body. You can have your legs and feet on the floor. You can have them crossed. You can close your eyes, whatever feels good for you in this moment. And I want you to bring your awareness to the breath. I want you to feel the inhale coming in the body, filling up the belly, the heart, the lungs, the shoulders. And on the exhale, releasing any tension in the face, the jaw, the neck, the spine. Just let it all go on the exhale. Breathing in through the bottom of the feet and the palms of your hands. Feeling that breath traveling to each and every cell of the body. And on the exhale, releasing any stress or tension, anything you might be holding. And just feel yourself safe and supported by the people who've joined here today. Allow yourself to really drop in and feel what's ever present for you in this moment. No need to fix or change anything, just observing with each inhale and exhale. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to do a little traveling experiment together. We're going to find a place in our mind where we might embark to go on an adventure. Maybe it's a train station, a plane station, maybe it's our own car. And we're going to get in that mode of transportation and we're going to travel back in time. Imagine it's a time machine and you can travel back through your own personal history, into the history of your parents, your grandparents, back into the time of your ancestors and your indigenous roots. Imagine connecting with 7 generations back on your mother and father's side, feeling into that time and space, whatever that environment is like in your own personal lineage. Breathing into that space, looking around, observing the people, the place. What's the temperature like? What's the sensations? What do you notice in this environment of your ancestors? See if you can't come up with any tangible experience. Feel around the space that you're in. Notice the people in the place. Feel them imparting any wisdom that they might have. Maybe it's elders, maybe it's children. Just allow yourself to have an experience of what it's like to be in that place and time. And then when you feel complete, we're going to travel back a little bit further in time. We're going to go back before the time of your ancestors, before the time of your tribes and your clans, back before the time when humans were even on the planet, to the time of primordial soup, when everything was fungi, and just the potential of humans to be born into this time and space. Feel into that time, before language, before knowledge. Feel into that network of plants and animals and planet. Tapping into the indigenous wisdom of your mushroom elders, your plant elders, the beings that came before you were here, that made the earth fertile and whole and alive. Try to tap into that experience of sound, sensation, temperature, feeling. What's it like to be back in that primordial soup before even your ancestors were present in this time and space? Breathe it all in into each and every cell of your being. Feel the connectedness of all things, all beings, all sentience. Feel the aliveness of Gaia and her energy and the completeness of the ecosystems. And now we're going to go back just a little bit further in time. We're going to travel back before even the creation of the planet. We're going to travel back into the universe of potential, the stardust, the energy of the Big Bang itself, before we even had earth and water and physicality, and feel that energetic explosiveness, that energetic expansiveness of a universe before it's even been born. Feel that as your indigenous roots, as your indigenous beginning. Feel that in every cell of your being, the potentiality of that expanded state, that energy before it's even come into mass, into creation, into the world as we know it today. Feel yourself expanding to the corners of the universe with that energy, all the stars, all the galaxies, all the black matter of space. See if you can't hold that in your awareness for a short time. The potential before our current reality. And now breathing that in, you're going to take your awareness back through the earth, back through your ancestors, now into this time and space, dropping into your physical body, into your legs and your belly and your heart and your chest, dropping into your arms and your fingers and your face and the top of your head. And before you become fully present and fully aware of this conversation, I want you to very mindfully, very slowly open your eyes and look at your technology device, whatever device it is that you're using today to connect to this communication, whether it's a laptop or a cell phone. And I want you to just hold that technology and this internet connection, connecting all of us in your awareness and in your intention for a minute, and really feel into the vibration of that device, the connectedness, the electricity, the energy of this technology that makes it possible for us to have this conversation together. Notice any sensations or feelings. Notice where you feel it in the body. If it feels expansive or constrictive. Nothing to change or fix, just holding it in your awareness. And very gradually, you can just come back to the present moment, to this conversation. People, if you were able to kind of make the travel, if you were able to go back, if you were able to feel anything, if the energy felt differently being present in this moment versus being back with your ancestors or your fungi friends or your stardust. Can somebody jump in and tell me if you had any sensations? I did. I mean, I felt like a lot of energy moving when we were doing it. Felt pretty intense to me. What do you guys think? Any feelings? Don't be shy.
I got a lot of visuals, so I didn't get as much feelings, but yeah, I was able to kind of go to like my Slavic roots, and it kind of got confusing because I was like, I don't know if this is my generation or past life, but I was like seeing like the forest, and yeah, that was my connection. And then I was like, I was the forest at one point.
Yay! That's awesome. That's amazing. Nice. Anybody else have any visuals or sensations in your meditation?
I was kind of the opposite. I tend not to get visuals, but I do get sensations. And so, what little I know of my family from Wales, they were farmers and they came over here in desperation. And so there was this sensation of they really wanted to stay where they were, but coming to Canada to farm was really the only option they had beyond a life of poverty. And so I felt a lot of that desperation or that frustrating decision point that they had to make, that now 3 generations later, here I am, a colonist.
Wow, that's powerful. Generational information. Anybody else have any feeling? Anybody tap into fungi or soil or stardust or anything before humanity? What I wanted to offer you in this experience, which you can practice if you want to, is a connectedness to your own Indigenous roots. So I didn't have a feeling of my own Indigenous roots until I started working with Indigenous healers. And when I started to really have a new relationship with the earth, with the environment, with the plants, with the medicine, and I started to really communicate with them, I found that they were conveying to me that I am Indigenous. I don't think we think of ourselves as Indigenous. I think we think of ourselves as colonizers. We think of ourselves as transplants. We think of ourselves as, maybe even strangers in this land that doesn't belong to us. And what has happened to me as I've practiced this, as well as the Ho'oponopono with the earth, as well as the psychedelics, the earth has invited me into a sense of belonging, that I do belong, that my Indigenous roots are alive, and that by honoring and respecting the space that I'm in, I am deepening that relationship with myself, with my community, with my planet. And that's really shifted a lot of things for me. And it's really been a buffer against loneliness, and it's been a buffer against a lot of the kind of modern noise. And I do think it's a healthy restorative practice. And I think there's a lot there to explore. So I wanted to start the conversation by, looking at this polarity that we have. When we think about and talk about Indigenous versus modern life, we always hold it in this kind of like yin yang, black, white, Indigenous being native, you know, modern life being something that's colonized. It's not like our inherent belonging, but it's something that's colonized. Indigenous having nature as sentience, meaning that all beings are alive, the planet is alive, there's an aliveness in all things beyond humans. Whereas modern world sees nature as a resource, something to extract. You take the oil or you take the fossil fuels, or an obstacle, something you got to kill the mosquitoes, you got to kill the rats, that kind of a thing. That's generally how the relationship is categorized. Indigenous is about community, whereas modernity is about individualism, every man for himself, each man is an island. Indigenous really values the mystical and sees mystery in all things, whereas in the modern world, we focus on the scientific and the rational and breaking things down into control and understanding. Indigenous is grounded in reciprocity and mutual benefit, whereas modern life is more about divide and conquer. That industrial mindset. Indigenous is more holistic, Modern life is more fragmented. Indigenous is about a present moment presence, not so much future tripping and figuring out kind of what the next thing is, and that forward leaning, future focused paradigm. Indigenous, they believe time is cyclical. So there's always this life, death, and rebirth. There's always these seasons that are happening and transpiring, the cycles of the moon, whereas modern is very linear focused. And then Indigenous is biocentric, meaning that there's a sense of belonging to the larger biosphere, versus modern life thinking kind of humans are the center of the universe and the center of all things, right? So this is like one of the polarities that we're living with and playing with, as humans living in the 21st century. What I have found is that the further I get on my journey of being with plant medicine, of being with Indigenous healers, the more I live in a both and experience of these things. I am both and. I have a PhD and I believe in science, and I also have had many mystical experiences that ground me in this other way of being. And this in and of itself, this kind of balance of both and living in these different paradigms, it can be a little bit weird. It can be disorienting. Also when we do any kind of plant medicine, herbalism, we might find ourselves gravitating more into the Indigenous paradigm and seeing and feeling that experience, which can also be disorienting and disruptive to our normal way of thinking. And this is something that we're moving through and we're learning to balance. And I don't put either one on a pedestal, like this one is better than that one, which I think we get into a lot of that kind of conversation. I take a much more holistic approach. Is like, this is just, we're complex. We live in paradox with a lot of our experience, and embracing this and finding integration with some of these, I think, is a powerful way to move forward. And if you guys have any questions or comments as we go, even if you just want to jump in and like offer something, like please don't hesitate. I just have about 10 slides and then we go back to a little bit more of practice. So when I was in the pandemic, the first thing that happened to me is my version of wellness started to implode. So I've been working in wellness for 20 years, as I mentioned. I have a variety of different certifications. I've been teaching a long time. And my industry completely shut down during the pandemic. Like all the spas were closed, acupuncture was closed, yoga was closed, all the things were closed that are my daily go-to for physical and mental health. Also, all the jobs that I was normally doing, whether it was like consulting for wellness businesses or teaching in studios or working at retreat centers, all of those also disappeared as well. And so what I got was a sort of a great reset on my vision and perspective on what wellness actually is, because I was just, I was in the, I don't want to say race, but I was just in this like go kind of going from one thing to the next, and I never really kind of stopped and took a broader perspective. And so one of the things that really downloaded for me during the pandemic, when I was doing all my writing and my exploring, was that we're moving into a new paradigm for human health and well-being. I don't think it's fully emerged yet, but we're definitely moving there. And I drew this tree, and on the top of the tree are the things that we try to treat. We try to treat anxiety and depression and pain and fatigue, right? We try to treat these things, and we try to attract clarity and vitality, energy, and strength. And, for my whole career, I have lived in this like center, this center part of the image, which is finding the root causes of things, of physical and mental imbalance and unhappiness. And I've told people, all of my students and all of my clients, you need to avoid being sedentary. You need to have a healthy diet. You need to avoid substances. You need to heal your trauma. You need to find a good support system. Like, this is where I have lived for 20 years prior to the transition I'm in now. And all of this was a very I am perspective. Like, it was a very human centric perspective on what actually creates a whole sense of health and well-being. And then what happened when the mushrooms and the hot springs and the wind and everything started speaking to me, and I started connecting more deeply with that, I realized that there was actually deeper roots, much deeper roots than the roots that I thought were the roots. And those deeper roots are that we're actually biosphere consciousness. We're not just I am consciousness, we're we are consciousness. And in that we are consciousness, there's a lot more things to take into consideration for whether we're depressed or happy, whether we're anxious or energized. Like there's a much deeper thing that's informing our sense of health and well-being. And on the negative side, it's a real separation from the planet. It's a real separation from relationship with the Mama Gaia and all the sentience on the planet. It's a destruction of the planet, even if you're not like deliberately destructing by your sort of unconscious use of the planet and abuse of resources. There's a contribution there that on some cellular level is vibrating inside of you. There's this consumptive, like taking from the planet without giving anything back ever. There's this competitiveness versus when I started doing a lot of the permaculture work and working on farms and building homes and all this kind of stuff, I really got connected with a deeper relationship with biodiversity and conservation and a loving relationship with the planet and living in community and reciprocity. And I really found like a tremendous deep healing in that was even more generational and even much bigger than me, me, my, I don't feel good, right? It was like a bigger sense of I don't feel good. Oh, now I feel better, right? Like just a larger sense of wholeness and a larger sense of healing that I personally hadn't tapped into or connected with our physical manifestations of different kinds of health symptoms. So this quote that I have on the left, maybe you know Maria Sabina. She was the kind of mother of mushrooms in Mexico that in the 60s introduced us to psilocybin. And this quote from her is, heal yourself with the light of the sun and the rays of the moon, with the sound of the river and the waterfall, with the swaying of the sea and the fluttering of birds. Heal yourself with mint, neem, and eucalyptus, sweeten with lavender, rosemary, and chamomile. Hug yourself with the cocoa bean and a hint of cinnamon. Put love in tea instead of sugar and drink it looking at the stars. Heal yourself with the kisses that the wind gives you and the hugs of the rain. Stand strong with your bare feet on the ground and with everything that comes from it. Be smarter every day by listening to your intuition, looking at the world with your forehead. Jump, dance, sing so that you live happier. Heal yourself with beautiful love and always remember you are the medicine. And I think that's really what we're tapping into when we're tapping into more Indigenous sense of healing and connectedness. And I think it has a lot of potential for regeneration for ourselves and for our planet. And so now we're going to kind of switch to modern technology. So when we did that first practice and you guys came back and you like looked at your laptop or your cell phone or whatever, did anybody have a different sensation in the body than they did when they were thinking about their relationship to their ancestors? Did anything shift for you? Could you feel a difference? Jen is laughing. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because Irina knows. Yeah, sometimes I have a love-hate relationship with my devices. So it was like love this, like this connection.
Right.
It's very special to me, but sometimes the overuse is a bit like
Right. And
Mhm.
where do you feel that like do you have a sense of where you're feeling it?
Yeah, I think it's like it's that position that we're in, right? It's like
Mhm.
shoulders and
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else have a feeling when you relate to your devices?
Yeah, I also noticed a shift in thinking of the time before ancestors. I was visualizing like almost synapses, like everything is connected and very symbiotic and harmonious and like kind of feeding off of each other and just like very connected. And then when it came to the computer, I started to open my eyes and notice almost like a resistance or hesitancy to opening them. And looking at the screen, it was like, oh, this is a computer, and then started to activate my mind more. And I decided to shift that instead of connecting with the computer itself, intentionally connect with all the people that are in this room. And when I shifted that dialogue from the device to the like heart space of everyone else, that felt like a much more connected circle.
Amazing. That's a really beautiful reflection. And so looking at it as looking through as opposed to looking at, right? And so that you're tapping into a different kind of energetic experience. And I think, again, to go back to this both and, it's a both and. You know, I'm looking through this at you, and I'm communicating with each of you with my words, with my gestures, with my energy and intention. And also there's a light box that I'm looking at. You're not here. Nobody's here. This is just a light box, and I'm alone by myself here. And so it's a both and. Both of those things are happening simultaneously. And we know scientifically, oh, I hear music. Do you hear music? What's happening? No, I only hear it. It's only me. Oh, geez, wait. Oh God, wait. Hang on one second. I have a tab open, and let me close this. This is all of a sudden this show that I'm watching starts going. So okay, there it's gone. I'm watching this series by Hamilton about all the different medicine all over the world, and it came on by itself and started playing while I was talking. Okay, sorry. So back to modern technology. Modern technology just like turned on and started playing like storm music while I was talking, which is really fun. We live in this both and experience, and we know that we're getting energetic waves. We know that we're getting these, what are they called, EMF or something waves. We know that we're getting this from our devices. We know that our body is being affected, you know, by whether it's the position that our body is in, or whether it's just like the impact on our eyes. You know, we know that there's an impact there. We know that there's a relationship there, and we need to be mindful of that relationship. And we also know that technology in general is kind of neutral in the sense that what you access with technology can be good or bad. And we've all seen the documentaries and heard the stories about the impact of social media on mental health. You know, people being too connected and having more and more experiences of ADHD, of depression, of anxiety, right? And then we also know that in emerging technologies, we have these incredible opportunities with modern technology to do things that we've never done before. And so I included these images. The image on the right is an image of telemedicine. I mean, I worked in telemedicine all during the pandemic. I was doing health coaching with hundreds of people all over the country that I wouldn't have had access to had we not had this telemedicine technology. And then on the other side is, you know, virtual reality, augmented reality. These are tools that are being developed and implemented for education and giving people exposure to things that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And again, like, humans decide whether or not we use these resources for good, whether we leverage them to make ourselves healthier, make the world healthier, or whether we, you know, use them, abuse them to cause harm. You know, this is just kind of, the tool itself is neutral, and we get to kind of create what we do with it. So at the top of the presentation, I mentioned that I have been working in what's called Web3 for the past year, and I wanted to make sure that we just had a clear definition of what Web3 actually is. So the first generation of the internet, prior to what we're using now, was when you had your dial-up desktop and you could maybe go on AOL, and it was very limited what you had access to, what you could do. The second generation of internet that we've all been using for the last, like, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years is the social media, like all the things you're doing, where you're putting out your images and your stories and your content, and that it's owned by these different platforms. that you're, participating in different kinds of community, but all of those are centralized, meaning someone owns them, and someone stores that data. And what's happening now is we are moving over into the next iteration, the next generation of the web, of the internet, and that's called Web 3. And Web 3 is characterized by a couple of different things. One is these emerging technologies of AR and VR. I hope you know what the acronyms mean: virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence. So we're moving into that with the technology. We're also moving into ownership of our data. So that's what NFTs are. It means that if you create something, you own it. It lives encrypted on a blockchain. You can collect royalties. I mean, there's a whole kind of industry around all of these things. And it touches cryptocurrency, it touches finance, it touches economics, it touches education. I mean, it's really pervasive and extensive, similarly to, a fungi network. I mean, it's really like, this is the web that we're living in, and that web is shifting and changing. And some of the values of this next iteration of the internet is that it's decentralized. Decentralized means that instead of a central authority like a bank running your money, cryptocurrency has everybody participating in a blockchain where the currency is decentralized and peer-to-peer, meaning you can trade from one person to another without going through that authority. Also, these mechanisms are built transparently, so you can see everything that's happening, which means that they're trustless or permissionless. It doesn't have to be validated by a third party. Works on consensus mechanisms. It's autonomous. There's something called decentralized autonomous organizations that are kind of the new version of business organizations. This is something that's emerging. And the reason that I think that it matters in the conversation of Indigenous wisdom and modern technology is because, believe it or not, people that are working in Web3 and working in blockchain, they share a lot of the same values and that renaissance that we're experiencing in psychedelics. So this emergence of medicine and this emergence of technology, it shares a very similar mindset. It shares a very similar paradigm, and people who are curious about this emergence tend to also be curious about plant medicine and vice versa. So I see this as a shift in consciousness and not just the next evolution of technology. I really do think humans are moving into a new phase of consciousness that's going to include all of these things and more. So what is the psychedelic renaissance? I've used that word a few times. It's something that you're going to hear more and more if you are tapped into the literature or the conferences or the content around psychedelics. Psychedelics has gone through a couple different waves. Supposedly, we're in the third wave of psychedelics. So the first wave of psychedelics would be going back as far as like ancient Romans or indigenous people, when they would use these plants in some kind of ceremony or some way to change their consciousness. And we have evidence. There's some controversy around where and when these medicines were used. Some people say 5,000 years ago. Some people say it's much older than that. But we do know that, a lot of this medicine has been used for thousands of years. The second wave was what happened in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, where they were more widely manufactured, they were more widely used, and we started to do research about the benefits for mental health, addiction, things like that. But as you know, that did not go so well. So one of the things we have to do is not do that again. The government started the war on drugs, everything became criminalized, right? You couldn't get access to any of these medicines. And then we moved into like that pharmacology kind of Prozac nation era for the last like 30 or 40 years. And now this is considered the third wave, the psychedelic renaissance of bringing these medicines back in a more controlled way and a more scientific way and a more therapeutic way. And so one of the leaders in this renaissance has been MAPS. They're an organization that has been doing studies for the last, I think, 37 years, something like that. Maybe you know Paul Stamets, like he's been a mycologist for more than 40 years. Michael Pollan published 2 books in the last few years that have become very popular. Conferences are popping up, the Wonderland Conference, South by Southwest, you know, the movies like Fantastic Fungi and all these movies, right? So this is the kind of emergence in media, in culture, in conferencing, in academics, and medicine, where the plants are making a comeback. And it's not just plants, right? Yeah, I know it's kind of exciting. I think it's exciting. You know, it's not just plants. Like LSD is not a plant, right? MDMA is not a plant, but it almost feels like, or seems like, you know, some of this renaissance is really driven by the plants, even if some of these substances are not plant-based themselves. So this is kind of what's happening now. And you know, more and more of these substances are becoming legal all the time and more pervasive. And now there's, you know, dozens of clinics and hundreds of practitioners, and it's pretty interesting time. So, okay. What do we do with all of this information? What do we do with all of this information? So, you know, it's very Western, it's very modern to kind of like take all of this information and just sort of, you know, forge ahead, just sort of rush ahead into the future and make all the protocols and make all the medicine and make all the clinics and sell all the stuff and give it to all the people, right? And we've done that before, and that never that never works out well for us. We end up just kind of like bulldozing into the future and just, yeah, not being mindful, right? Not to the experience of what we're doing, the impact of what we're doing, the outcome of what we're doing. And so an Indigenous methodology for moving forward, for this renaissance of emerging technologies, emerging medicines, is this kind of fourfold path, which is respect, connect, reflect, and direct. So it's a different way to kind of take everything and move forward in a way that hopefully, you know, creates more healing and less harm. So respect means that we stay aligned with our values, you know, we set good boundaries, and this is something that we know by cultivating a strong spirit. It's that gut feeling of right and wrong, and it's not about a morality, right? It's about a harmony. Is this in harmony with the world that we want in the future? Is this in harmony with the lifestyle that we want, with the kind of relationships that we want with our people, our plants, our planet, right? Like, are we coming from a place of respect in our movements and our decisions and our actions? Connect is about building strong relationships and exchanges that are equal or reciprocal for everybody that's involved. This is your way of relating, and this is the work of the heart, right? This is like staying connected as we're making these decisions about how to use these things, staying connected to the people that we care about, including ourselves, staying connected to our own heart, and using that sense of relating as another guiding factor in how we're taking and sharing knowledge. And this is the work of the head. So this is the work, like Chelsea was saying, that like you get in your head when you get on this device. This is where we get in our head and we think, we use our brain. I feel like for as like intellectual as we are, we don't actually think. Like there's not a lot of thinking, critical thinking happening. But like collectively, when you get together in these meetings, in masterminds, in conferences, like really thinking and collectively thinking is a powerful way to again, create more healing and less harm going forward. And then direct is about acting on the shared knowledge in ways that are negotiated by all. This is the work of the hand. So one of my favorite things that I did during the pandemic was I was building earth ships. I don't know if you know earth ships, but I built earth ships in Puerto Rico and New Mexico, and they meet all of the human needs, and they're in perfect harmony with the environment, and they recycle trash. I'm on a call. I'll come out when I'm done. And so like it's a powerful, self-contained, self-reliant system that's in harmony with self, with planet, with principles, with values. And it's like a perfect tangible example of something like to physically build that has technology and has harmony and is indigenous in the sense of the connected to the wisdom of the planet, but then also modern in the sense of meets all of the human needs that you could possibly have as a human in the 21st century. So I always think of the Earthship as kind of my tangible example of something built that really embodies this way of thinking. Okay, so we are going to close before we do our Q&A. We're going to close with another 5-minute meditation so that you can integrate all of the information that I've given you, and so that we can also think about together collectively the kind of future that we want to create. So I invite you once again to just sit back, relax, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's just leaning back a little bit more in your seat. Maybe it's closing your eyes. You heard a lot of words from me. I gave you many, many words, many concepts, many ideas. So you're going to just try to soften your mind and let that absorb into your body and bring your awareness back to the breath once again, feeling the body filling up with air in the belly, the heart, the lungs, the head, and then softening and relaxing, noticing any place that you may have been holding tension during our call. Maybe your neck or your shoulders were a little bit tight. Maybe your hips need to soften. So just feeling into any area in the body that needs to be released, allowing that to go on the exhale. Nice, long, deep breath, filling up the belly, the heart, and the lungs. And on the exhale, softening the forehead, the neck, the shoulders, the back, the spine. And now I'm going to invite you to get back into that mode of transportation that we used at the beginning of the call, the one that took you back to your ancestors and your primordial universal roots. And I'm going to ask you this time instead to travel forward in time. So we're going to change that dial on our vehicle, whatever means we're using for travel, and we're going to go forward 7 generations into the future. We're going to travel through our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and all beings on the earth 7 generations into the future. Now we're going to look around and see, in our most positive and optimistic estimation, what that world could possibly look like if we use all the regenerative tools, if we have our renaissance of psychedelics and other helpful tools. What is our best version of the future 7 generations from now? Look around. What does the air feel like? What is the temperature, the sensations, the people, the place? Just drop into that and see if you can't get any feelings or images. Incorporating the best of what we know from the past and the best of what we create in the future into one integrated whole 7 generations from now. And now we're going to get back into our traveling device and we're going to go a little bit further into the future. We'll go another 7 generations. Moving forward a few hundred more years into the future where we have mastered regeneration. We have mastered technology and psychedelics and plant well-being and human well-being, and things are abundant and prosperous and harmonious and healthy. And feel into that, what that's like for you, for your loved ones, for your planet. Maybe we're on multiple planets. Maybe we live in multiple environments. Feel into whatever that feels like in the best, most optimistic version of the far distant future. And now reflect a little bit on what your legacy is in participating in these futures. What actions, what gestures, What changes could you make in this lifetime? What habits could you cultivate that might lead to this most optimistic, most regenerative, most healthy version of the future? What gifts do you have to bring, to share, to offer that might contribute to the best possible version of the world in the future? Nice. And coming back to the breath, coming back into the present moment, bringing with you all of that awareness and insight that you've gathered from your journey, bringing it back here to this moment, to this space with these people that have gathered here in this virtual room. Feel yourself coming back into the body, into the legs and the hips and the belly and the heart and the neck and the shoulders, alive and awake here in this present moment. Anybody see anything cool in the future that you would be willing to share with us? What do you think? Did you see anything? Did you go sci-fi? Were you traveling through space? Irina, what did you see?
I'll share. That was so cool. Thank you for that. That was very different than we usually, experiencing in guided meditation. But you know how I say we, me at least, in a mental health space, and this was this sincere desire for everyone just to be happy, right? But when you invited me to expand it, and I was like, okay, great, let's just heal everyone and create this perfect environment and perfect world. So I ended up in this sunshine eco village where everybody it was like a cookie cut thing. So I realized, I was like, okay, well, let's get there. But then what? Then it didn't feel then it felt too perfect. And I was like, what about if I just want to have a tear dropping out of my eye? So that was a little bit of a awakening for me, oh, let's all be happy. I want everybody to be happy. I want you to be happy. Then you just end up in this perfect environment. It felt like a futuristic movies, where then just doesn't feel normal anymore. So that was interesting. I need to contemplate on that.
Amazing. Yeah, the contrast is the source of creative generative energy. Without any contrast, nothing can grow.
Yeah. So my takeaway is well, maybe it's not about everybody being happy. Maybe it's, back to that balance thing, it's just keep inviting myself to that balance. Today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm crying. Why am I crying? I don't know. But maybe it's okay. I'm working on it's okay part, because it's still not okay, but I'm working on it. So thank you.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. Olivia, you're smiling. Did you have any insight in the future?
Yeah, it was actually interesting. It was something about showing how the ingestion of psychedelics will be a little different, something about through the skin. And it's more of you're going to be able to control the length of it, how intense, maybe the dimensions you're going into. So it was interesting. And maybe that was on my mind because I still always get a little bit of the nausea that comes up, when the surrender happens. So it was cracking the code of how can we just ease into that surrender versus the bodily function that still kind of comes up.
That's amazing. And I love the idea. As you were talking, I was seeing how maybe you're sliding into a creative meeting with your peers and you just have to tap in a little bit more. And then maybe you need to get a little bit more sober to go do your workout, and you could kind of control your states a little bit more effortlessly as you're moving in and out of those different parts of your day. That's super fun, right? That'd be so fun. Anything else? Peter, any thoughts? Chelsea, any thoughts?
I was a Star Trek nerd for my whole life. And so I've always envisioned the future as very sort of shiny metallic sci-fi. But in that exercise, it was very much a return to nature, that we hit 8 billion people on the planet a couple of weeks ago. That kind of growth is unsustainable. We're adding 1 billion people every 10 to 12 years for the last 100 years. At some point, that's going to peak, and we're going to realize that industrialization, movement to cities, just is not sustainable. And there was this sort of lush, naturey vibe. No, we're not going to all live on farms. There's too many people for that. But there is much more of a integrated connection to nature than we have now.
Amazing. And maybe it could be both. Maybe it could be Star Trek meets nature. Why not? I mean, so much of my personal journey is this both and. It's both and, right? Like, I don't want to give up a lot of the comforts of modern life that, that I have. It's both and I also adore nature and need that for my own, sustenance. So I think both are really powerful. And now we have 3 minutes left for Q&A. If anybody has any reflections, anything that they want to share, I'm so grateful that you guys spent this time with me. It went by much faster than I expected it to. It feels like I've been here for 10 minutes with you. I think I have one more slide. Yeah, Q&A. And then this is my contact if for any reason you want to find me or contact me. Any last comments?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, my camera is off, but I've been engaged in a really, really good talk. So thanks very much. I mean, do you have a recommendation for for myself? I'm just kind of getting started into this space and I find it really, really interesting, but it's kind of like Web3 in that, like, where do you go? How do you start? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, this community. So this call was hosted by Jen Todd, who's on the call here, and she's the founder of Evolve. And she is creating a space, a safe space like this, where you can come to these types of workshops, where you can join a mastermind, where you can find different practitioners. And her intention is to be kind of like what the mission impact is for the psychedelic space. So Stephanie and I worked on a project together this year called Mission Impact, which was onboarding women into Web3. And it was like fundamentals. What do you need to know? How do you find different opportunities? How do you show up as a leader in this space? And Steph, that's exactly what Jen's trying to do here also. So I would connect with her. She's an awesome resource, and just stay connected with this community. It's a great place to start.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Anything else? Last 60 seconds. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. Please don't hesitate to send me an email or find me on social or whatever you need. I'm here as a resource for you. I love you for spending this time with me. It's so great. And happy holidays. Happy holidays. And if you have sad holidays, that's also fine. You can cry during the holidays if you need to cry. You don't have to be happy. So yeah, I'm here for you. I'm so happy to spend this time with you. And I hope that we stay connected. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Bye, everyone. Ciao.
Bye, everybody.
That was
Awesome.
fun. Oh, let me hold on. Stop.